When the late afternoon sun poured through the blinds of a quiet law office in Phoenix, Arizona, 74-year-old Helen Parker sat nervously across from attorney Michael Grayson. Helen had lived a good, simple life, raising 3 children, working as a school librarian for more than 30 years, and doing her best to pay her bills on time. But lately, with the rising costs of healthcare, groceries, and housing, the letters in her mailbox were growing thicker and scarier. Some came with bold red lettering across the top. Final notice. Others were worded so aggressively that Helen couldn't sleep at night. Her daughter, Melissa, insisted she go talk to a lawyer before paying another dime. That's how Helen ended up in Michael Grayson's office on a warm Tuesday afternoon, clutching a folder full of overdue notices. Michael, a well-known attorney who had spent 2 decades defending seniors from unfair financial practices, glanced at the folder and smiled gently. "Helen, before you panic, I want to tell you something important," he said, leaning forward. "There are certain bills seniors in your situation do not legally have to pay. And, unfortunately, a lot of companies hope you don't know that." Helen's brow furrowed. "You mean some of these debts aren't even real?" "Not only that," Michael replied, "but some of them can never be collected from you by law. Let me walk you through it. You're not the only one in this situation. Thousands of older adults across the country are tricked into paying things they don't legally owe. But once you understand the rules, you'll see how much lighter your life can feel." That was the beginning of an hours-long conversation, one that would not only change Helen's life, but also spread through her family, church, and community as a beacon of hope. Michael started with a story of another client, a 78-year-old man named Richard Moore, who came into his office last year. Richard had been getting collection calls about an old credit card debt from the 1980s. The debt collectors told him he owed nearly $20,000 with interest, Michael explained. He was ready to pay from his Social Security checks just to stop the harassment. Helen gasped. "Did he have to pay?" Michael shook his head.
No.
Because the statute of limitations had already expired. In most states, credit card debt has a legal collection period, usually between 3 to 6 years. After that, collectors can't sue you for it. They can call, they can scare you, but legally, they can't force you. And Richard didn't have to pay a penny. Helen's eyes widened. "So all those threats in the letters? Just empty words," Michael said. "And if they keep harassing you, you can even send a written request for them to stop. Legally, they have to comply." For the first time in weeks, Helen let out a laugh. It was small, but it felt like a weight off her shoulders. As their meeting went on, Michael carefully explained other bills that seniors didn't legally owe. Each example came with a story. Stories of real people who had been tricked into believing they were trapped by debt, only to discover the law protected them. There was 69-year-old Margaret, who was pressured into paying her late husband's medical bills, even though the law said she wasn't responsible because the debts were solely in his name. Then there was George, a Korean War veteran who was being hounded by a nursing facility demanding payment from his daughter, even though federal law clearly states children are not automatically responsible for their parents' nursing home bills. Helen listened intently, sometimes nodding, sometimes wiping away tears. She couldn't believe how many older adults like her were carrying burdens they didn't need to. Michael leaned back in his chair and said, "Helen, let me put this as clearly as possible. Your Social Security benefits are protected. Collectors can't touch them. They can't take away your retirement savings just to pay some decades-old bill. They can't make your children pay for your hospital stay. And if anyone tells you otherwise, they're trying to take advantage of your fear." Helen whispered, "I wish my husband had known this before he passed. He was always so worried about bills." "That's why I tell every senior I meet," Michael said, his voice firm but kind. "Knowledge is your shield. Once you know what the law says, no one can scare you into giving up money you don't owe." By the end of their meeting, Helen felt a kind of peace she hadn't experienced in years. She left Michael's office with a lighter step, determined to share what she'd learned with her neighbors, her church friends, and especially her children. Over the next few weeks, Helen became something of an advocate. At her church's community lunch, she stood up and shared her story. "Friends, if you're getting letters demanding money, please don't panic. Go see someone who understands the law. Don't let fear control you. There are bills seniors don't legally have to pay. The room grew quiet, and then others began sharing their own stories. One woman had been paying on an old store credit card for 15 years. Another admitted she was sending money to a debt collector every month even though the debt wasn't even hers. It belonged to her late brother. With Michael's guidance, Helen helped them all learn their rights. Months later, Michael received a letter from Helen, written in her neat librarian handwriting. "Dear Michael," it began, "I can't thank you enough for what you did for me. You didn't just save me money. You gave me back my peace of mind. Now, whenever I see another scary envelope in the mail, I don't feel afraid anymore. I feel strong because I know the truth." Helen's story became one of many in Michael's career, but it stayed with him the most. Because it wasn't just about the law, it was about dignity, about giving seniors the freedom to live their golden years without unnecessary fear. And that's the truth at the heart of this story. Across America, millions of older adults are tricked into believing they owe bills that legally aren't theirs. But the law is clear: expired debts, medical bills in a deceased spouse's name, and certain nursing home charges cannot be forced on seniors. Social Security and retirement funds are shielded by law. Helen Parker's story is proof that when knowledge meets courage, no senior has to live under the crushing weight of unfair bills.